in a certain sense, come out of it, like the snake, which, when it has cast its skin, can look upon the skin from outside, though feeling it a part of itself. To the first stages of initiation, we learn, in like manner, to feel ourselves free from the physical body and learn to recognize it. In this moment, quite special feelings steal over us, which may be described as follows. Brackets, there are so many different experiences along the path of initiation that as yet it has not been possible to describe them all. In Title Knowledge of the Higher Worlds and Its Attainment, you find much on the subject, but there is much more than is contained in that volume, close bracket. The first experience, one known to nearly every one of us who in ordinary life pursues the path of knowledge, is such that speaking in accordance with our feeling, we say, quote, "This physical body as it appears to me, has not been formed by myself. It is certain that I have not made this physical body through which I have been brought to what I am in the world. If I had not this body, the ego, which I now regard as my great ideal, would not have arisen within me. I have become what I am only through having kept my physical body riveted upon me." Close quote. There arises, first of all, something like resentment against the cosmic powers that, quote, "I have become what I am," close quote. It is easy to say, quote, "I will not cherish this resentment," close quote. When there arises before us in melancholy majesty that which we have become through the way in which we are bound up with our physical body, its power is overwhelming. We feel something like resentment or bitter hatred against the cosmic powers that we are what we are. But now our occult training must be so far advanced that we overcome this hatred, and on a higher stage can say with our whole being, with our individuality which has already come down into incarnations, it is we who are responsible for what our physical body has become. When we overcome this bitterness, there arises the feeling, already often described, quote, "Now I know that I am that very thing which appears there as the transformed figure of my physical being, that I am myself. But because it was crushing me to death, I knew nothing of my physical being," close quote. We stand here before the significant meeting with the guardian of the threshold. But if we come so far, if through the strenuousness of our exercises we experience what has just been said, then from out of what is common to human nature, we recognize that what we are in our present form is the result of preceding incarnations. But we also recognize that we have to experience the deepest pain and must work ourselves out beyond this pain to the conquest of our present existence. And for every man who is sufficiently far advanced and has experienced these feelings in all their intensity, who has looked upon the guardian of the threshold, there arises of necessity an imaginative picture, a picture which is not painted by constraint, as in Jesuitism, from that which stands in the Bible, but which each man experiences through that which he has felt in common with all mankind, that which he is. Through these very experiences, he would quite naturally come to know the picture of the divine ideal man, who, like us, lived in a physical body, and who, like us, in this physical body felt all that can be done by a physical body. The temptations, the picture of the temptation that is presented to us in the Synoptic Gospels, the leading of Christ Jesus to the mountain, the promise of all external realities, the desire to cling to the outer realities, the temptation to remain attached to matter, in short, the temptation to remain with the guardian of the threshold and not to pass beyond him, appears to us in the great imaginative picture which would have presented itself even if we had never heard of the Gospels. That is, Christ Jesus standing on the mountain and the tempter beside him. And then we know that he who wrote the story of the temptation has depicted his own experience as he saw in the Spirit Christ, Jesus, and the tempter. Then we know that it is true. In the Spirit it is true that the writer of the Gospel has described something that we ourselves can experience even though we know nothing of the Gospels. Thus we shall be led to a picture which is similar to the picture in the Gospels. We gain for ourselves what stands in the Gospels. Nothing is constrained. Everything is drawn forth from the depths of our own nature. We proceed from what is common to humanity and bring forth the Gospels afresh through our occult life. We feel ourselves one with the writers of the Gospels. Then there arises within us another feeling, a next step in the occult path. We feel how the tempter who appeared there has grown into a mighty being who is behind all the phenomena of the world. Yes, we learn indeed to know the tempter, but we learn by degrees in a certain way to value him. We learn to say, quote, the world which spreads itself out before us, be it Maya or something else, has its right to exist. It has revealed something to us, close quote. Then there comes a second feeling, which again can be described as a quite concrete one. In the case of every person who fulfills the conditions of a Rosicrucian initiation, the feeling arises, quote, we belong to the Spirit who lives in all things, and with whom we have to reckon. We cannot in the least comprehend the Spirit if we do not surrender ourselves to it, close quote. Then fear comes over us. We experience fear, such as every real knower must go through, a feeling for the greatness of the cosmic spirit which pervades the world. We are in the presence of this greatness, and we feel our own powerlessness. We feel also what we might have become in the course of the Earth's progress, or indeed in that of the cosmos. We feel our own impotent existence, which is so far removed from divine existence. We feel fear in the face of the ideal, which we must come to resemble, and before the greatness of the effort which is to lead us to that ideal. As through esotericism, we must feel the whole greatness of the effort, so must we feel this fear as a struggle which we take upon ourselves, a struggle with the spirit of the cosmos. When we feel this, our own littleness, the necessity laid upon us to struggle in order to attain our ideal, to become one with that which works and weaves in the world, when we experience it with fear, then only may we lay this fear aside and betake ourselves to the paths which lead us to our ideal. But because we feel this so fully and rightly, there comes before us yet another significant imagination. If we had never read a gospel, if mankind had never had such an external book, a spiritual picture would rise before our clairvoyant sight. We are led out into the solitude which stands clearly before the inner eye, and we are brought before the picture of the ideal man who, in a human body, experienced all the anguish, the terrors in their infinite greatness, which we ourselves can taste in this moment. The picture of Christ in Gethsemane stands before us as he experienced fear in an overwhelmingly intensified degree. The fear that we ourselves must feel on the path of initiation. The fear that wrung from his brow the bloody sweat. This picture we have at a certain point of our occult path without external documents. Like two mighty pillars, there stand before us upon the occult path the story of the temptation experienced spiritually, and the scene on the Mount of Olives experienced spiritually. And then we understand the words, watch and pray, and live in prayer, so that ye may never be tempted to remain standing on any one point, but that ye may continually stride forward. This means experiencing the Gospels first. It means that we experience everything, so that we could write it down just as the writers of the Gospels have described it. For we do not need to take the two pictures just described out of the Gospel. We can take them out of our own inner consciousness. We can bring them forth out of the holy of holies of the soul. No teacher is needed to come and say, quote, "You must place before yourselves in imagination the temptation, the scene on the Mount of Olives," close quote. We need only to place before ourselves that which in our consciousness can be developed in meditation as purification of our common human feelings. Then, without constraint from anyone, we can call forth the imaginations which are contained in the Gospel. The Jesuit spiritual movement described in the preceding lecture was such that the pupil had the Gospels given to him first, and afterward experienced what was set forth in the Gospels. The path described in the present lecture shows that when a man has betaken himself to the path of the spiritual life, he first occultly experiences that which is connected with his own life, and thereby can experience through himself the pictures, the imaginations of the Gospels. The end of Lecture 2.